Hello and welcome to Off Road, and I'm your host Frank Ferraro. And today our co-host is Andrea Catania. Andrea, welcome.
Hello, Frank. Thank you so much for having me on again. I always love co-hosting with you.
It's always a great, and you know something. Every time you come on, we really have a great response. So we're always glad to have you.
You
Um,
know what? I think it's just because we've been around a while and we have a lot of good stories to tell and things to share.
yeah, absolutely. So I was browsing LinkedIn, and I saw a couple of posts about the SEC changing their rules when it comes to SPACs, in terms of the merged companies, like the new companies coming on. And so they really want a lot more transparency
Mm.
in on these deals. And what's amazing is that these how these deals have come into fruition from when you and I think first started in this business. I mean, I remember doing these deals, as a retail stockbroker,
Yeah.
and they were called blind pools or blind
Yeah.
trusts. And I mean, these offerings were $100,000,
Yeah.
$50,000, and 50 shareholders or 40 shareholders.
You
And
had to follow Rule 419 even back then. And I remember a guy named Nathan Lowe. I don't know if he's still doing these. I think maybe he's doing a lot of Israeli projects right now, and he's such a philanthropist. But I think it was Early Bird Capital. They were doing so many. They were doing SPACs really before anyone was really, and from my recollection, that anyone was really
they're
getting into the
still
game
doing
fully.
them now. They're
Wow.
still doing them now.
What do you
You know,
know?
so absolutely, they're still doing them now. And but the thing is that people don't realize it's a great way for some companies to go public. And I was just recently talking to a consultant who was consulting a company, on different ways to go public and whatnot, and different ways to raise money. And he had mentioned the SPAC group. And lo and behold, one of these big companies liked it. But along with the liking and hey, we want to do this, that, and the other thing, there becomes a lot of work involved.
Oh my God. Oh my God. It's so, Frank, it's so complicated and expensive, potentially unnecessarily, because there are truly not that many private companies that the SPAC sponsors are that interested in. They want a company that has been established and that has assets and revenues and is going to be, likely to succeed in a meaningful way. And honestly, if that's the case, they should do an IPO themselves rather than potentially give up 30% of their company in a SPAC transaction. But
Well,
neither here nor there. That is a possible method for going public if you meet the requirements of those that are the primary owners of these funded SPACs. And the transaction where the private company is merging into this special purpose acquisition company that has money in it, we call that a D-SPAC, because you're basically, it operates like a reverse merger. But one other thing I'll mention before we go back into a little discussion about who should be doing these and why and what the alternatives might be. It looks very much like a public offering for two companies. There's an S4 required for this merger disclosure, and it is the most comprehensive registration statement that there is. So it's a lot of moving parts, and I've got to be honest, it's costly, and I don't want to say unnecessarily so, because if that's the way the company wants to go, so be it. But there are many other options available to all of those earlier stage companies that are not generating 20 million in revenues with,
right.
a 10-year history.
And you know what it is? It's really about the certain stage that the companies are in and what they really need. They have to have a certain need for that. And I think the underlying SPAC company has to have a want, for that. And
Yes.
so, but let's back up a little bit and I mean, let's talk about these SPACs and SPAC offerings before we even talk about what the
Yeah, and there are a lot of them. You know, what we could
I mean,
provide doesn't have to be now, but there are, even if someone just wants to see what's available in terms of specs, you could just go on a search engine and say available specs, and you'd be surprised how many brokers there are out there that are literally just showing a list of what available companies that may have been mid-deal and the deal fell apart and they're available again. But you really need experts involved to help you navigate where there might be issues if you're considering doing this particular version of a reverse merger.
well, they have, I mean, knowing these transactions, I mean, these transactions also have, some regulatory things that they have to do as well. Like they have
Yeah.
to find a merger candidate within 2 years. Maybe you can elaborate a little bit on that.
Yeah, it's actually less than that. You have only a certain amount of time, 18 months, to find that candidate and close. And if it doesn't work out within that requisite period of time, it's very expensive to get an extension. I mean, it's just very costly. It's hundreds of thousands of dollars. So it is really in the SPAC's best interest to do its due diligence, to be very specific about what it's looking for. And there may be sponsors, there may be a couple of, or an investment banking firm involved that's already raised the money, and maybe they're looking for a biotech, or maybe they're looking for, a wellness company. It could be a nutraceuticals company. They may have a specific focus of what they're looking for, but to be shopping around for an extended period of time is not wise, because the due diligence phase takes a while, right? And you don't want to waste too many months on that. You want to make sure that the fit is right and that everyone can afford it on the legal fee side, on the accounting fee side. And fees are definitely worth considering when a company is deciding what to do. The issuer or the private company that's looking to, or it could be a public company that's merging into a SPAC, which is way more complex than a private company coming in. It's just more disclosure. The issuer pays for all of the legal fees. So when looking at how much it's going to cost to go in, it's not only their counsel, but it's underwriters counsel, or the SPAC sponsor. It might be an investment banker. It's their counsel, and it's the accounting fees to get the audit done. So it really should be decided upon very thoughtfully and with the right team, so that you're not wasting a lot of time ebbing and flowing and trying things without having the game plan, the routine down. It's important.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Wow. I just like I said, I mean, but the thing is that, once these companies actually do do the deal, a couple cool things happen. There could be a lot of cash coming into a
Sure.
company. I mean, that's a big thing, and but the other thing is that the company is also buying quarterly reports, annual reports, 8Ks, all different
The cost of being a
financial.
34 app reporting company, it
Yes,
ain't cheap.
absolutely. So that's something that that a private company has to seriously consider.
Right.
But hey, you want to know something? I mean, it takes the guesswork out of a lot of times. I think if you did it that way, it might take the guesswork out of um, trying to get an underwriter to evaluate you and see
Yeah, that's such a good point. That's such a good point.
you know,
And sometimes you'll have a CFO or someone that's in the blind pool, in the SPAC, in the shell company, that has public company experience and is willing to stay on. There may be some real synergies that make it a little bit easier for the new private company to come on in. And hopefully there's plenty of cash in there for the company not to need to go out and raise capital right away. But the sort of cautionary tale is know about all of the fees that need to get paid out at closing from the very beginning. Because what looks like it might be 20, 30, 50, $100 million in a SPAC, there may be so many things that are have to be accounted for that you wind up with it considerably less. So not every SPAC with cash in it is created equal. And it really requires a careful review because you don't want to wind up with very, very little if that was your goal, and you wind up giving away a hearty percentage of your company. But I will say, if there's enough, and if you're not giving up too much of the company's value, and you're public reporting, you're on NYSE American or you're on NASDAQ, you can do a follow-on offering. You can do, ultimately you qualify for, S3 eligibility. A company can do an at-the-market transaction. So once you're in that position as a listed company, the world can open up to you in terms of the capital markets. But I don't want to oversimplify it. There's all kinds of things to consider before going that SPAC route, because it's pricey. I'm not going to lie, it's expensive and it's a little complicated. But if all the stars align and it makes sense for the private company that's doing well, and the deal that's negotiated is not too dilutive, and there's enough money to make it make sense to pay all the fees, it might be the best thing.
Why not? And what do you, and from what you see on the street, what do you think is like the threshold for where a company could make that decision? Because you're not going to be talking about a startup coming to
No,
you.
those days are over. I
Yeah.
had a client a few years ago when SPACs were going crazy. There was a 2-year period where there was like constantly, you remember, it was just a few years back. I think it was
Yeah,
right before
absolutely.
COVID.
Sure. Mhm.
There were companies that were getting these very elevated valuations from bankers, and everyone was making a lot of money. The SEC wound up coming down hard on some of these deals that had 2 and 3 types of exploding warrants, and there were redemptions. And here there were companies that had no revenues. They were startups. I can't mention the name of this client in particular that I had, but an investment banker gave them a $150 million valuation. Another one gave another similar client a $300 million valuation. They were pre-revenue. But with technology and IP, and I'm pretty sure those days are over. The bankers are being much more careful about getting a third-party valuation before entering into a discussion, let alone a letter of intent to
Well,
have
I
a
mean,
merger or SPAC transaction done.
right now with the SEC and that new rule, this is what it's all about.
Yeah,
The companies pretty much have to supply enough information to go on a form.
yeah,
They're doing an IPO no matter what.
exactly. It's the same level of
It
disclosure. Like I
really
mentioned, the
is.
S4, the S4 is like very comprehensive. If a company prepared an S1 registration statement to file, even initially if it was confidentially for an IPO, ultimately the public before the IPO would see everything about this company that's required by the regulations. And the disclosure requirements are massive. And the audited financial statements give the public a level of comfort that what this company is saying is truthful, accurate. It's been confirmed, it's been verified. So those are all things that kind of go into the requirements of an IPO, or even a going public organically with you raise money maybe in a private offering or a general solicitation offering, file a registration statement, and either apply to trade on OTC markets with what you used to do, being Mr. 211 man, market maker who made markets in 2,000 stocks or so, or have the company wait until it's ready to qualify to list. And if I may say, not to discourage anyone from the public markets, if a company is so far away from qualifying to list, then it shouldn't be going public yet. It shouldn't be going public yet. You shouldn't have like a brand new startup that has a lemonade stand going public thinking that, wow, I'm going to be able to get all this money in a SPAC, or I'm going to be able to take advantage of the capital markets. You need business fundamentals, management, some historical revenues, and, you know, profits. How novel. You want to have all of that so that even if you do the public offering without an IPO, should qualify to list. If you're not even close to qualifying to list, if you don't have, net income of 750,000, or if you don't have shareholder equity of 15 million, there's criteria for both NASDAQ and New York Stock Exchange American. Maybe you wait a while before you enter the world of the public markets and have that great expense, because it's not this magical thing that happens that you're just showered with money because you're public. Remember when we first started doing this 30 years ago, so many companies thought, all I need is a symbol. That's all I need. I need a symbol and I'm going to be able to get finance, no problem.
It's a little different now.
You know what? It was even different then, because companies who thought that were making a big mistake, because it wasn't so easy to raise real money for these companies that didn't have the fundamentals, right? But now, yeah, it's definitely a little harder, and it's good that it's harder.
I mean, look, it just protects the public, which is, at best, that's what it comes down to at the end of the day. Just trying to
Bingo.
protect the public, and I mean, because you absolutely want to, especially when you're investing in them, you just want to know the truth about things. That's all, and that's all it's really doing.
Yes.
Kind of opening up that window for any kind of investor and these transactions are big.
Yes.
So there's a lot of money involved in them. So I mean, the more the transparency, the better, I think.
Absolutely. And that's really, the SEC came to be after the crash of 1929, and it was with good reason. Too much, smoke and mirror opportunities. There were promoters that weren't providing information. And when we look at the regulations that are still really at the forefront, the Securities Act of 1933 and the Securities Exchange Act of 1934, they're old. They're around, and the SEC has been around since 33. This is like old stuff. And I think 2000, the coming of, things like Sarbanes-Oxley and Regulation FD, I think it was 2000 and 2002. Those were major pieces of legislation. And then all the changes of the Jobs Act brought in a lot of other exemptions. But we're talking about tried and true, all about, like you said, investor protection and making sure that the public and existing shareholders are properly informed, so that the decisions they make are based on something, right? They know what the numbers are. They know a bit about management. And if management had some issues or bought or sold securities in the company, it has to get disclosed, right? So there are no surprises.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you for coming on today. It was a great discussion about SPACs, and really, hopefully, if anybody has any questions that are listening or whatnot, you always know where to reach us. You can reach us in the bios. You can sign up. You can come on the website.
Please do get our information. We're happy to. I'm happy to have 15-20 minute free consultation with anyone who'd like to talk about the possibilities of considering this path for going public. You may find that you have more options than you realize. So yeah, let's share everything either in the chat, or I think we've got a landing page that folks can go to if they want to learn more, and we're here to help.
Well, all righty. Until next time, I'm Frank Ferraro and Andrea Catania. Bye-bye.
Take care. Coming from off-road.
All righty. Take care. Bye-bye.